Alright, let's talk about something that keeps resurfacing in the XRP world. And every time it does, it creates exactly the same emotional reaction. A headline drops, Twitter lights up, people start tagging each other, and suddenly it feels like we've been dragged straight back into a place that most XRP holders never want to revisit. This week, it was the familiar question all over again. Is the Ripple lawsuit coming back? Before we go any further, if you're new here, welcome. I'm Paula. On this channel, we don't do hype cycles or panic reactions. What we do instead is slow things down, look at incentives, regulation, and structure, and try to understand what's actually happening underneath the headlines, especially in moments like this, where emotion tends to run ahead of reality. Because on the surface, this story did look serious. There was a letter from the House of Democrats criticising the SEC for dropping major crypto cases. Ripple's name was mentioned alongside companies like Coinbase, Binance, and Kraken. And almost immediately that turned into speculation that the SEC could somehow be pressured into reopening cases, including Ripple's. And if you've held XRP through the last 5 years, that kind of headline doesn't just feel abstract. It hits straight in the gut because nobody wants to relive that period of uncertainty, exchange delistings, and constant legal anxiety. So the first thing we need to do here is slow this right down and separate what feels scary from what is actually possible. Because legally, the idea that the SEC can simply reopen the Ripple case just isn't how the system works. Because once a case has been decided by court, those same parties cannot be dragged back into the courtroom over the same issue again. It doesn't matter how angry politicians are, how loud social media gets, or who is running the SEC at any given moment. Political pressure does not override settled law. That's why legal commentators like Bill Morgan were so dismissive of this idea almost immediately. Not because they were downplaying the importance of regulation, but because they understand the difference between political theatre and legal reality. The Ripple case is over. That chapter is closed. And it's important to say that clearly, because a lot of the anxiety we saw this week was built on something that simply cannot happen. But here's where it gets more interesting and also more frustrating. Even though the lawsuit itself is finished, it still feels like XRP is stuck in limbo. And that feeling isn't imagined. It exists because the lawsuit was never the only problem. What Ripple wanted